Oh, it's 8 minutes away from 7 o'clock. It's a massive debate, especially since the weekend, as to whether or not the Cullinan diamond should be returned to South Africa. Just the tip of the iceberg, though, in terms of whether former colonial powers should be paying reparations to the countries and territories that they conquered. Mametlwe Sebei is a lecturer from the Department of Jurisprudence at UNISA. He's been very kind to make some time for me this morning. Mametlwe, let's just start here if we can and talk about jurisprudence if we can. Essentially, it's the theory or philosophy of law. Is there any existing guidelines when it comes to reparations of former colonial powers? Is there even a context of this?
Well, basically, number of countries across the world have claimed and have campaigned for the return of, colonial loot and particularly the artifacts and other symbols. In this case, we are talking about precious metals like the Cullinan diamond that have been repatriated by, former colonial powers, some of which were in the museum, in the libraries. You are talking about the manuscripts. You are talking about, artifacts in museums and, sculptures and other, assets of artistic, but also, historic value to people from which it was plundered. All of those things have been returned, and I think there's vast, precedents in law for that. And I think if the campaign can be waged, that can succeed.
Could we get it right in this country as well, though? I'm asking a two-part question. I mean, how do we begin to quantify damages? Because it's not just about the removal and the plundering. You used the right word, the plundering of the jewels. It was the labor, the forced labor that went into this during a time of colonialism as well. Families were torn apart. Husbands moved away from wives and children. How do we begin to quantify something like this apart from just getting the Cullinan diamond back? That's not going to be good enough.
Absolutely. And I don't think I'm suggesting that. The point is that they are just the most visible symbols, which I think, for me, it is absolutely scandalous that South African government and many other governments, actually from the neo-colonial world that were part of the former British Empire, would even be participating in a spectacle like this, which from its beginning to the end really is just a farce. But at the end of it, in essence, is really a glorification of the royal power of the unending wealth accumulated through colonial violence, but also the imperial legacy that was established through colonial conquest, violence, land dispossessions, slavery, and everything that we have correctly pointed out. Now, I think that the issue, there are those visible objects that are still there, that are still intact. Yeah. The 3,100 carat Cullinan diamond is there in various pieces of, in the jewel of the British crown, right? I think the Great Star is making the scepter, but also other parts of it are in the royal crown as well, and in the private collection of the Charles as inherited from his mother, late Queen Elizabeth, right? The other point is that there is many other things that obviously can be claimed, but that family is owning, billions of hundreds of billions worth of assets that I think, for me, should be liquidated to compensate as much as possible people that have suffered from slavery, from land dispossession, from exploitation. But it's not only them; it's also the British capitalist class, the corporations that many of them are still here, but also some of them are in Britain, and that have benefited directly from the slave trade, that have benefited from colonial conquest, and all of those should be held accountable and should be made to pay.
Let me ask you this, because it's a very good point you raise, and I wanted to end off our conversation by asking this then, because you mentioned the word justice because of what happened all those years ago. And many will argue that many families in countries that were colonized still feel the effect of that today. It's an argument I would agree with. Could reparations be seen as a form of justice, Mametlwe? Just a last question to you.
It can never be enough. You can't do the legacy of hundreds of years of colonialism just by way of reparation. I think of importance is to ultimately change the economic structure of society that, of course, continue to perpetuate oppressions, including racism, including the legacy of slavery, and also the continued exploitation, particularly in this country, of the black working class that is evident in the appalling levels of poverty, in the appalling levels of unemployment, but also just lack of infrastructure, which of course is perpetuated not only by the incompetence, mismanagement of the economy and the country by the current government, but in many ways it reflects the very domination of our lives, of the economy, and every aspect of this country and society by the very big cooperation at the behest of which the British Empire was established, at the behest of which many of these new colonial arrangements, including the British Commonwealth to which South Africa scandalously continued to be part of, is actually created to perpetuate. All of those things will have to be done, but ultimately we must start somewhere. And part of it is that I'm saying the issue of Cullinan Diamond at the very minimum must be demanded, because that is not going to be sending, it's not only of symbolic value. My view is, money, hundreds of millions that is estimated to work today can make a huge difference in the lives of the mine workers and the community of Refilo in Cullinan, where the diamond actually belongs.
And that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you as well, because it has a real potential positive knock-on effect for those who actually mined this particular diamond. Mametlwe, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. My thanks, of course, to Mametlwe making time to speak to us this morning about this Cullinan diamond. Mametlwe Sebei, lecturer of the Department of Jurisprudence at UNISA.